Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. And I've put together the top 7 key market drivers I look at when analyzing a real estate market. Go to sethferguson.org to download your free copy. Our guest today built a real estate portfolio of 150 properties in less than 5 years, lost the $20 million business in 2008, but recreated his wealth 4 years later and reinvented his life. Damion Lupo joins us today. Damion, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Seth. Good to be here, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to this, especially the clawing yourself back out aspect, because I'm, as lots of the listeners know, I'm going through a pretty rough patch too. So I'm always interested in getting inside the head of people who've been there before me.
I can tell you that that's the most important part of business. I was with Robert Kiyosaki, who many people know, wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, many other great books. And we were talking a few months ago, sitting there, and he said, the truth is that wealth is not about a pile of assets. And he's in his 70s now, so he's really a different perspective than when he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad when he was around 50. And he said, wealth is the experiences you gain by going through things and basically living through them. And most, because really, what kills you? Nothing. And what kills you is not going after your actual what you're here for. That's like tiptoeing to death's door safely. And he said, you're going to get wealthier by going out there and doing things. So to your point about going through some rough patches, what you're doing is you're getting wealthier because you're learning through doing. And that's what I've done in spades. That's what $20 million flip, where you lose $20 million and go to negative $5 million. That's just a whole lot of wealth creation right there, because it's the experiences of learning through it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, we'll get into this later, but I'm finding, when you're on the reverse side of that rough patch, at least I look back and I wonder, how did I even function before? Because you change so much going through that. And I find you get a chip on your shoulder, you get that inner fire burning more. And when you look back, it's like, who was I before?
Yeah, you also tend to buy a Ferrari, and that, at least I think most guys, it's like this thing. We need to have an Italian sports car that costs at least $250,000, and then all of a sudden we're important and we're relevant. I happen to have bought the one that Will Smith drove in Bad Boys 2 because I thought, well, then I'll be bad boy. I was a bad boy. I was terrible, but it's really, it comes down to the ego driving things, which is the biggest shift for me after that process was to understand that the wealth wasn't just a pile of stuff, and that there's never enough stuff. It's kind of like an alcoholic, because one drink is too many, 1,000 is not enough. It's like one of the credos. And with money, if that's your driver, if that's your God, then one is not. Your first million is it's funny because it's never enough. Like, I got my first, and then it was a second million, and then 5 million, and it was like, I need more. And my entire world revolved around that cash. And when I realized that it needed to shift, and my idea of becoming a billionaire went from $1 billion to 1 billion lives, everything changes because of the intentionality behind it. And that's, I think, important for most people, because we tend to go, I need more money to solve everything. The truth is, it just accelerates and exacerbates who you already are. And that's a huge problem for most people, because they're driving based on scarcity and fear and consumption. And it's not really based on significance and contribution and connection. And that's what we really need to start with. And then everything else from there becomes magic.
Yeah, no, 100%. So then how do you think about your goals then, your investing goals? Because, lots of the guests I have on the show, they'll say, oh, I want to acquire X number of units this year. But if you switch your thinking around, how do you approach it?
So I do. So one of the things that I do, my investing is about development now. So I'm doing projects that are relatively large, and I look at those not as necessarily a way for me to make a bunch of money, but to bring more people in so that they are starting to create a way for them to have that freedom from the shackles of a job that they hate, or a life that they're really not into. And so instead of going to private equity or larger firms and saying, hey, we're raising 10 or $20 million in equity, I'm going to individuals. And so for me, the investing is a way for a lot of people to be lifted up together. It's not just about me making a bunch more money, because it's a formula and it's a game. And if you have a great product and you've got a plan and you've got a team, it's not really that hard to put money together. But that doesn't really matter, because if you're the only one with money, it's a pretty lonely existence. Yeah. So the focus now is how many people can I bring in together that are self-responsible, that want to be a part of this community? And that's what's exciting. That's the shift. It's not just about me having more money in the bank, because who gives a crap?
Yeah. And at what point did that shift occur? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that that wasn't always your mode of thinking.
No, in the beginning, it was about, I'm going to do my deal and I'll have people that'll become a part of it. And so I had investors years ago, but it was, the most important thing was I was going to make more money. I was going to have more assets. My balance sheet was expanding. I mean, that's interesting, but I wasn't really taking into account the other people, like their lives. And so now that's the first thing I'm thinking about. Is this better for everybody? And it's, if it is, then we all win together. I have the mentors I have in my life now, very much, whether it's Robert Helms and Russ Gray or Gene Garino, it's about doing good. It's about doing things together. It's about everybody winning. That's a part of it. It's not about a win-lose. And I think in the past, there was way too much win-lose, even if I wasn't conscious of it. And I think the universe gives us a really good opportunity to learn this lesson by taking it all away and saying, all right, dum-dum, let's try this again and see if you can get it this time. And so I had to go through that process and go into the timeout box for a number of years, where I was like sucking my thumb in a fetal position, hoping and praying and just like, crying like a big baby. And ultimately, when I popped out of that, I asked a better question. The question is, what is true? Why am I doing this, and who am I? So let's start with who I am, and then go figure out why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And it's the question on metrics and measuring and investing with the numbers. The numbers just tell you whether or not you're on track, and they give you feedback. But saying, okay, I'm going to build another $100,000 in residual income or something. Okay, why? You're trading time for that thing, and ultimately you can't get the time back. So if you're making $30,000 a month and you spend $10,000 a month, you better really like creating investments, because you're trading your life for it. And I think that's the missing piece. People don't realize. They just keep going because they're addicted to the rush.
Yeah. And so like with yourself then, how did you approach discovering what was that inner drive? Do you have a process that you went through?
Yeah, I got hit by a Mack truck. I mean, and it's a pretty intense experience, but anybody that's gone through this with losing a parent, when my father was really sick and he had a few weeks left to live, we sat down and had a conversation, and he looked at me over a cup of coffee and he said, there are so many things that I wanted to do. And I saw regret. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it broke me. It hurt really badly. And it was also a huge gift. It was a warning that it's not about money, because there are things that he didn't do. He had money, but he didn't go do them. So he didn't really live. And then at the end, that regret of not going out there and living fully. And I started thinking, okay, what am I doing? Am I just here to collect little pieces of green paper with dead presidents on them? Or is there something else? And it's the experiences, and it was that moment where things shifted. And I thought, well, okay, first off, why in the heck am I here? And do I need $100 million to be me? And the truth is, it doesn't take that much money. When we talk about the metrics, what most people don't really understand is that the number isn't what you think it is. To be free, to actually live, to find your purpose, to live your purpose, to share and connect and contribute, it doesn't take nearly as much as we think. It takes more of a choice, and that's the power. Once you make the choice, and I made the choice, I'm going to be here to be me, which is it's in a teaching capacity. So the investing was teaching other people through the process of doing it. So it wasn't being a charlatan and teaching from non-experience. It was actually teaching from, hey, here's look at that scar tissue, bruises. Like that was what the teaching was based on. That's unique. That's who you want as a mentor and a team. People that actually have the scar tissue. They tend to be bald and gray, by the way. Just, kind of one of those.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned one of your mentors, Gene Guarino. He's a former guest on the show, and we had a great time when he came on.
He's a good guy. I mean, there's a lot. When we look out there, there's a lot of people that you can learn from. And I think one of the things that's great about Gene and Russ and Robert is that they've just been out there and they've bled in the streets and the trenches. And that's who you really want. There's this one character who I will not name, but he stands on stage and he jumps around and he says, "I've never lost money and it's been almost 20 years." And I look at him and I'm like, dude, either you are about to have your ego run over you or you're full of crap. And that's something really, really fascinating to see, that there are people that want to be perfect. And the reality is there is no perfect in investing. There's no perfect in business. There is a lot of process where you learn and you get the crap kicked out of you. And that's just how it is. But you're not going to die. So you really get better by going out there and learning that, hey, bleeding and bruising is part of the process.
Yeah, no, 100%. So what would you say is your number one challenge right now with your business?
I would say that In general, the number one challenge is irrational exuberance. It's like this whole Alan Greenspan thing. I mean, people think we've been in a bull market for a long time, and I'm pretty conservative. Lose 20 million bucks or 2 million or 2,000 if it's all you got, and you go upside down. Then you have an experience. It's called you get more conservative, and you're not as reckless. In the beginning, you think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, so you're like, I can do anything. I can do whatever, no consequences. So now I'm looking at things and I see people that are absolutely crazy in how they're looking out and their perspective. They don't understand that we are in a cycle, that we're going to have a recession. Like my model for my developments is expecting and planning with a recession in the middle of the project. And if you don't do that, which most people aren't, they're going, oh yeah, I've got a value add play, or I'm going to flip this house or whatever. And the truth is, a lot of stuff goes wrong. It's not all about Chip and Joanna on Flip That House or whatever that show is on HGTV. That is not reality, guys. That is not true. And just because somebody got involved in an apartment and it went really well, it's called timing. When the tide comes in, like there's a huge tide in Florida right now. And I know that this is like, you're going to listen to this. You're like, yeah, that was like a month ago. Like whenever you listen to this, there's a huge hurricane as we're talking, right? And recording this. And that lifts everything up and then it knocks certain things over. And that's what's going to happen right now. It's lifting a lot of people up, but it's also going to knock over their house because their ego is going to think that they're invincible. And I think that's hard to have rational deals and talk to people when they look at you and go, yeah, why can't you give me 27% a year? Because they think that that's normal. It's very hard in business. And so here's the hardest thing, to be patient, because we know that in business things cycle, and in business, most people are just, they're too speedy. They're too anxious. It's also something you learn by being out there for a long time. And it's why bald, gray people can give you perspective because they've seen and been through many decades. So I think patience is the challenge for being in this marketplace right now.
Yeah, and if somebody's going after you asking for a 27% return, I think the capital preservation speech is should be front and center.
That's actually a great point, because a lot of times people come in and we do a lot of work with retirement accounts where people are using their 401ks and their IRAs to invest in real estate. And so we set these up and people have control and they can go invest. And one of the biggest concerns they have is they go, well, I need to find a deal because my cash is sitting here and it's not doing anything. It's not growing. And they look at the stock market, and 2019, the stock market it's a freaking roller coaster of epic proportions all over the place. The problem people have is that they're impatient and they don't understand capital preservation. So here's the deal. You having your $100,000 in your account and 3 months from now, it's still 100,000 is a very good thing. And I don't give two rips what the stock market did or whatever deal you think you should have been in, because this FOMO, this fear of missing out, is what kills people because they rush into bad deals because they just want to get in. Having your capital, it's called dry powder. Having dry powder sitting around and waiting for a great deal with great executors, meaning a great team, is far more valuable than just getting in a deal just to get in. And I think that people can really learn a lot from that. In fact, you should rewind this, go back about a minute and listen to capital preservation and FOMO and ask yourself, am I anxiously trying to get into a deal, any deal, some deal, just so my money is doing something? It's probably going to get lost if you have that focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's totally true. So, throughout all your experiences, have you developed any routines or rituals that have helped make you a successful investor?
Yeah, it's called challenging my assumptions, because it's not what I know that's wrong. It's what I know and I'm certain of that just ain't so. And it's somebody said that, I don't know if it was Yogi Berra or Warren Buffett or something, but so what I do is a couple of things. One, I meditate every day. And two, I ask people for outside counsel, and I have mentors and I have people that will tell me the truth. The biggest problem in having somebody telling you, giving you feedback, is it tends to be somebody that loves you. And they'll tell you what you want to hear. They'll sugarcoat it. They'll be nice to you. You need somebody that'll slap you upside the head and go, you're being a moron, or here's what you're missing. And that's one of the values in having a mentor, that you're paying, because you'll pay attention to what you're paying for. You'll value things that are valuable. And so having somebody give you feedback, I just did that this morning. I literally reached out and said, I need some counsel from one of my inner circle. And that is a ritual. I'm constantly asking people because I've been through a lot and there's a lot more that I don't know. And I'm old enough and wise enough to know how little I know. When I was 25, I knew everything. It's a huge problem.
Yeah. I've been there too. And then The gray hair starts creeping, the hair starts receding, and then you're in trouble.
It vaporizes. You go, well, what happened? And that's called life. You learned a lot, and your hair
Yeah.
went.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so take us to 2008, because you built up your portfolio, then everything came crashing down. Um, what did it feel like as you were like hitting that rock bottom? What was it, a big drop, or was it a slow, like gentle glide down?
Well, if anybody's ever been to Africa and you've gone on rivers, there's a river called the Nile, and I was in that thing. It's called denial. I was in denial, and that was it. It was like, oh well, I'll just keep feeding these things. So at the time, every bank and every lender was just trying to get as much money out as possible because they couldn't. They just had too much. So I had like $1 million available on credit cards, and I got it all, and I was using it all to keep my thing going because I didn't want to say, okay, this didn't work. I mean, at one point in 2006, I had like 7 projects that were all projected to make $1 million each, and within 12 months, they all went from positive million expectations to losing $1 million plus in each. And so, this not accepting that we made a mistake was that was part of my big problem, because it allowed me to lose more than I had, go way beyond that, and then the biggest problem is my entire self-worth, who I was, my self-concept was tied up on my balance sheet. So my self-worth and net worth were absolutely the same thing. And when you go to a negative $5 million net worth, you start thinking, well, I don't think I'm really worth much. This, if I'm nothing, I don't have any greenbacks. And that was the biggest problem. So disconnecting those two and realizing that there's more to us than our balance sheet, I think that was a hugely humbling experience that I had to have. And getting on the other side of that, I was able to move forward and start focusing on the contribution that it would have a side effect of the money, instead of having the money being the focus, and maybe I'd have a connection, which really never happened.
Yeah. So, in between the moving forward and then the, hitting rock bottom, there was probably a dark period at some point. Tell us what that was all about.
Well, I mean, there's a point where it's got to be a predictable pattern where you're in denial of what's going on, and then you move into a place where you're mad and you're upset, and it's like an emotional, it's a mesh of emotions, and the dark period is the problem with that whole process is because it was money focused. It wasn't really, I didn't really build the relationships. So when I went down, I tell everybody this now, you really want to have a network that and you trust, you like, that you're around, because when things get choppy, you're going to find out who is actually a part of your life that matters, that wasn't just somebody you were paying to be a part of your life. And I had very little of that. So it was basically an isolated mess. So the dark period it's very dangerous when you go through rough stuff and you're literally by yourself. And fortunately, I had a very, very wise man in Texas that I spent a couple of years with, and he's a psychotherapist. And we literally sat there every week and we asked one question. The question was, what is true? And we went deep into that, pulled all this stuff out. And that's what helped process it, because you'll literally kill yourself. You'll die if you don't get this stuff out when you go through something as devastating as blowing up your life. And it's not just losing the money, because I had a lot of projects, a lot of investors, and everybody went down together. And when people tell you they wish that you would die, they hope you rot in hell.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty intense experiences, and it really makes you kind of second guess your whole beingness and why you're here, whether you should be here.
Yeah, and just having I guess the guilt of losing investor money, and then having people tell you they wish you were dead. How do you start turning around your mindset to allow you to claw yourself out and rebuild?
The first thing that has to happen is you have to get to the point where you're willing to forgive yourself for making mistakes and realizing that you're human, that there's no perfection, and it takes years. I mean, this is not something you go, okay, I'm good. Like, I just thought about it today and I'm good. Like, you don't want to retreat, do some yoga, meditate for 5 minutes, and then you're set. Like, this takes a while, and you have to go through it. You have to move through it. There is no hack. There's no 4-hour week through this stuff. Like, this is a multi-year process, and that's why there was no real estate in my world. I didn't even say real estate for many years, because when you go through that process of everybody getting hammered, it's that stove is hot. You don't want to go touch that thing again. I see a lot of people that are a little bit too reckless because they don't understand the responsibilities and the fiduciary obligations when they're putting deals together, when they're raising money, because they've never had to make that phone call and say, look, I just lost your life savings. I made that call. It is, I mean, I guess it could be worse. You can call somebody and say, look, your child died. next to that, telling somebody that they're 50, 60 years old and you've lost their money, that there's not much that's worse than that. You're literally telling somebody that they're toast financially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're not really taking this responsibility on the way that they should be. And I'm a little nervous for a lot of people, because I think that they're recklessly moving a little bit too fast and not considering the consequences.
Mm-hmm. And what was it that brought you back to real estate?
Well, you moving through this whole pain and this process, I still like the idea of real estate. I like real assets. I don't trust the paper stuff that's out there, because I can't connect with either the people that are running things, and I'm talking about stocks, bonds, mutual funds, things that are just artificially created. I don't trust them. I trust people that I can look eye to eye, in the eyeballs, and I trust things that I can put my hands around. So I like real estate. I like gold. I like things that are real. And when we're talking about businesses, I like businesses where I can go talk to the CEO. So the thing about real estate is there are certain things in real estate that make sense. Like, people are always going to have to live somewhere. They're not always going to have to go to an office. They're always going to store their crap, because especially in America, we love our crap. So there are certain things. Gene Garino's model with assisted living is perfect, because how many millions, tens of millions of people are going to be older in 10 years? All of them. So like this silver tsunami is crazy. There are things that I like about real estate because they're very predictable. And if you study Harry Dent at all, with his demographics, with the baby boomers and everything is pretty dang predictable. And people are going to want certain things at certain times in their life. And when you have these waves of people, it's pretty easy to understand. Okay, at this year, we're going to have a peak of people wanting their first house or their apartments. You can understand millennial mentality wanting less house; they want more experience. And so if you just start dialing in to these things, it's sort of cool, because you can solve a lot of problems. And that's what real estate is to me. It's a way to solve problems and create wealth and do a lot of good at the same time.
Yeah. And is there a deal that stands out as a keystone deal that made a big impact on you?
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot, and I'll kind of link this back to what's going on in the market today, people are investing in things all over the place, and they're very disconnected from them. I just did a field trip with some investors on a project that we're doing, and a number of investors flew out and they spent an afternoon looking at the project, meeting the people, meeting the developers. Like, it was very hands-on. What I did many years ago was I did a lot of real estate stuff, and people would invest, and basically nobody was showing up on site. Now, that had to do partly with people trusting me, and I appreciated that. The problem is we were all pretty disconnected. And I had a project in particular in Memphis, and it was a rehab project, and I had it was nobody was living there, so I had security. And at one point, I got a call, and they told me, "Hey, you have a problem. All the copper is gone. It was literally stolen out of your complex. 119 units, $250,000 in damage." And I said, "This sucks, but I got insurance. Good news is I've got insurance. Problem is, it's Lloyd's of London." And the reason that they were the only ones that would insure is because they don't pay very well. In fact, they're terrible. So after about 6 months, I got about 30 cents on the dollar. And I thought, okay, well, that was an interesting lesson. Didn't really like it. The biggest problem is that I got a call shortly thereafter. You know what the call was? "Yeah, Damion, we got a problem." I go, "What?" They go, "Your copper got stolen again." And I said, "Again?" Like, the same thing. And I said, "Well, we have an armed guard there. How did this happen? Did you talk to the guard?" And they said, "Bigger problem. Your guard was killed." And I said, "My armed guard was killed. They shot and killed my armed guard." This is why one of my rules that I hope everybody will, if they don't have them, they'll actually write out their rules. I don't invest in places that require bulletproof vests, because I don't want the burden of my project being a place where somebody died. Somebody's mother or father never came home because they were on my project. I just don't want to be involved in that. And so that thing hit me really hard. I was disconnected from the project, and I was in a place that I really don't ever want to be a part of again. I don't want to be in a place where I don't feel safe walking around. And the burden of having somebody die on your watch as part of your thing, trying to protect your property, it's a big, pretty heavy weight to carry.
Wow. I have no follow-up to that. That is nuts.
There's more to real estate than just spreadsheets. And I think that's why you invest with, and you have teams of people that have been out there and done it, because you need to understand that stuff. And if you don't, because you haven't been through it, you need somebody that has gone through it And I see people going, oh, the numbers are great. I'm like, yeah, but you're in the middle of the ghetto. You're going to have people dying. Like
Yeah.
you really want that. And people don't think about that until they've been through it. And then you carry that the rest of your life. So this is why you want teams. You want mentors that have been there, not just thought about it, not just academic intelligence, but real world triple PhD in the trenches.
Yeah. And, as experienced real estate investors know that there's what the spreadsheets look like, and then there's what actually happens in real life, because it's easy to change numbers on Excel.
Pro formas and spreadsheets don't mean jack crap. They really don't mean anything. What means something is your team. Y'all have probably heard this before. It's better to have a bad deal with a great team than a great deal and a bad team. And even if you don't have a bad team, but you got a good team without the right experience, you got a ticking time bomb. And so you really want to look at the people that are executing and making sure that they've got a track record. And if they don't, then you're going to give them a track record. It's called, you're giving them an education with your money. So do you want to do that? I don't. I mean, I think that the rational thing is to say, okay, cool. You join up with somebody that's already executed. They bring their track record. They're executing. You learn. But nobody has the patience to do it. Everybody wants to do everything, get rich quick. Like it's too much hip hop rap music. I made $1 billion in a week selling some water, like whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody's looking for that Instagram like story post, right? With the plane in the background.
Yeah. I just watched a documentary on the fire event. This whole thing that happened. I didn't even know about this. I just found out about this in the last couple of weeks. And I'm laughing because so many people are following influencers and they're not digging behind. They're not really understanding. They see half naked women and ballers on planes that they don't own, that they barely rented. They probably just snuck on the tarmac and they're over there hey, quick, take a picture of me on this thing. And then I'm going to put it on my influencer account on Instagram. There's so much smoke. And now there's this new app with the deep fake where you can put your face or somebody else's face on somebody else's body. And like this just came out and went crazy. And so I think we need to start asking what is real, what is true, like digging a little bit more and chilling the heck out because we're so anxious. We feel like we're going to get behind. And the truth is we're going to get run over.
Yeah. 100%. And so if you could give somebody some advice who's, just starting out building a real estate business or, starting from scratch, what tips would you give them?
Just stick with M&Ms, mentors and meditating.
M&Ms, I like that.
I don't know. I used to like M&Ms, and now it seems fitting that you need to have stillness because what we have is speed. Everything is fast. And so you need stillness so you can actually be present because you will get run over if you're not present. And I don't see very much presence. I see people frenetic. And so having that and really having people that are older, that are experienced, that can give you perspective and they can call you out and can give you counsel. Those two things, the M&Ms in your life, will change everything if you really embrace them, if you really get present with stillness, and if you really trust the right person, not just some random coach, but somebody that's actually done it. It's great to have somebody, but come on, when somebody goes to a course for the weekend, now they're a coach and you're like, well, what do I do? And they go, well, I think you should have these 5 steps. Let me look at my manual of questions to ask you, and then I'll tell you what to do. That's not what you need. You need somebody that can actually emotionally tell you, this is what I see coming because I can feel it because I've been there. That's what you're for. That's priceless.
Yeah, 100%. So tell us about the impact getting involved in investing, assets, real estate. Like what sort of impact has it had on your life for good and bad?
Well, it's a lot of fun when you're reckless and you're crazy. It's a lot of fun, and then it's not a lot of fun, and it's really painful. And I think real estate ends up being, if you want it to be, it can be the best personal development program that exists because it shows you who you are and it helps you to develop. I've made some of the biggest mistakes where I was passive. So one of the biggest dumb moves is to be a passive investor. It's like, can you imagine having passive sex? Like, how long is your partner going to hang out with you if you're just like, all right, cool, just do me? Really? So I think we have to be engaged. And so real estate is really exciting and really interesting, and it helps us grow by being a part of it. If you just hand your money out and you're not engaged, your spouse and your money is going away. It's just how it is.
Yeah, actually, I do these real estate live streams, and last week I did the correlation between working out and real estate. Maybe I'll do active sex and real estate investing. That's awesome.
Yeah, if anybody doesn't get that, they've been in a cave because that is just, that's the truth. I see people and I'm like, you literally passive life. That's what you're talking about, passive. So how is that going to work out? Just imagine yourself passive. You're going to be like, you're going to be worthless. And here's how the universe looks at that. They go, well, if you're not contributing, if you're just passive, we don't need you, and you're taking up space and resources, you tend to not live very long. So it's sort of a really bad strategy if you want to have a fulfilled life that actually lasts very long.
Yeah. And let's look ahead 10 years. So a decade. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
In 10 years, I'm on a mountain teaching, and that was what I really learned, that I'm meant to teach. And so it's continuing to teach, and it's teaching from experience, and it's actively engaging in projects that actually matter. I'm a huge Seth Godin fan, and he constantly says, do work that matters. And don't just do work that the market wants. I think there's a golden combination. People go, well, if I do what I love, I'll never work a day in my life. And you may starve to death too. So that's not necessarily the right strategy. The strategy is figure out what you love, and then look out and see if the market cares. So those two things, and it doesn't even matter if you're not great at it, because you can develop skills. So it's really more important than you figure out, okay, am I into this thing? I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm reading the IRS code. That may be a little cuckoo. I get it. It's also my passion in doing better and bringing more value to people. And so 10 years from now, it's going to be a different version of that, but it's going to be more of teaching and creating and connecting. I mean, our focus should be on connecting and contribution and significance in providing value to people. I mean, our life has meaning with that. Our life doesn't have meaning just having another $1 million in the bank. So it's about more presence. It's about teaching more presence, and it's about freeing people from the shackles that they've put on themselves financially and otherwise.
Yeah, good stuff. So Damion, you've got some books. If somebody's looking to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
Best place to meet me is DamionLupo.com. I mean, I know it's very confusing. Go to my digital home, and I've actually got a workbook there that is the Reinvented Life. It's a workbook where it's the questions. The problem is we generally don't know the questions to ask. We go, I want to do something different, but where do I start? This one is my way of helping you see that the truth is inside you if somebody will help you with the questions. So you can just get a copy of this workbook. It's a free workbook. You can kind of hack the book. When I wrote Reinvented Life years ago, I did this workbook because a lot of people are like, well, I just want to do the work. I don't want to read the book. So I go, great, here's the workbook. So we created this workbook. And so now you can literally do the work inside the book. And so if you want to shift or you want to grow, this is a great place to start at DamionLupo.com. You can get a copy of that workbook.
Oh, that's great. Well, Damion, just want to say thanks for taking the time. I really enjoyed this chat.
Been a lot of fun. It's always fun to connect with people, and everybody that's listening now. You just invested the last half hour, so thank you very much for investing your time with us. I mean, it's truly priceless. That's why I love podcasts, because people are actually showing up and they're being present enough. They're not just Google clicking or Facebook linking. They're really truly participating. And so congratulations for even being here and spending your time. And Seth, thanks for creating this platform.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.